All right, I'm here again today with Pastor Danny Lopez and Pastor John Palmieri, and good to be with you guys here in this beautiful studio. We didn't mention it last time in the first episode, but man, this is a cool spot.
This is a nice spot.
Really cool spot. I love
vibes.
I love the vibe
man.
in the back wall here. You know,
What
I
do you
know
call
the
that?
artist. He's a good friend of mine.
What do you call the guy there?
This is Quincy. Everybody, Quincy. All right,
Yeah.
Quincy. Remember that name.
Cool. Okay.
But yeah, great shout out to that. And we're here at the New Life Community Church, a Midway location in the studio here. And so good to be with you guys. We're continuing the journey about restarts, right? Absolutely. That's what we're talking about. This whole series is everything restarts, everything on restarts. In our last episode, we spent a lot of time talking about questions to help build a framework for what a restart is. Which is something New Life has spent over 2 decades, right, navigating through. Mm-hmm. And we just want to give that away. Everything that we've learned, whether through great experiences or even difficult experiences, we want to be able to kind of package that up and give it away to the C with a capital, the church with a capital C, so that they can do the work of evangelism. They can do the work of the gospel and keeping it in buildings that are already dedicated for kingdom use. Want to keep that going, honoring the legacy, right? We talked about that, honoring the legacy of that church. And so I thought it'd be really good to piggyback off of that first conversation with more of a narrative, a story. And Danny, I've talked to you about this. Would love. I think it would be great for our listeners to hear your story of an eventual restart, but it didn't start that way.
No, it didn't.
Right? It didn't start that way. So why don't you tell us, how long have you been pastoring, and tell us everything that kind of led up. And I know that's a lot. I'm asking you to talk a lot about something.
I'll hit the high points.
But everything that led up to the restart that you're currently in right now.
Yeah, I've been pastoring full-time since I was 28.
So it was like 2 years ago, right?
Gosh, I'm 58, 28, just do the math. But even before that, I've done music, been doing music since I was 17, 18, and singing and playing in church. And so I knew I wanted to do ministry. I just wanted to dedicate my life to preach the gospel and make disciples. It's just been my heartbeat. And thank the Lord for the people who poured into all of our lives when we were younger. Yeah, all of us, people love people, and we love people into the kingdom. By the time I was 28, 29, I went full time, went to Moody, graduated from Moody, did youth ministry, and I considered myself a lifer. I knew I just wanted to do the rest of my life was youth ministry.
When I first met you, you were a youth pastor.
That's right.
Yeah,
I came to speak at the warehouse.
Yep.
On the south. That's when I first met Asa and met Dwayne.
I was one of the Utes, the two Utes that
I
were
love
there.
that warehouse, man. That was sweet. That was a great spot.
It was.
You guys were the envy of us, some of us Northside youth pastors. That's when I first met Asa. Actually, that's when I first was introduced to New Life. Was the invitation to come and speak at that event, and then I began to develop a relationship with Dwayne when Dwayne became the youth pastor. So Dwayne and I hung out a lot. We did a lot of events together. I spoke here. He spoke at our youth ministry. So that was a relationship that we just began to not navigate through, but evolve. Anyways, long and short, I shifted from doing youth pastoring back in 2004, sold my house and moved to Seattle, Washington, actually the Skagit Valley, 45 minutes from the Canadian border.
Wow.
It was a different season of my life. I went into youth missions, started doing coaching and training in youth ministry. I was responsible for a beautiful youth center in the Skagit Valley through a parachurch ministry called Youth Dynamics. Okay. Very mirror to youth YFC, Youth for Christ. But it just wasn't flying. It just wasn't working there for me.
That's a big move, though, man.
Oh man, it was night and day. And I thought I can navigate through change real easy because growing up, my family moved almost every year and a half for different schools and blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking, change is no big deal. When I went to Seattle, oh man, it was night and day. Cultures were like literal complete opposites.
Yeah. There's not a lot of sunlight over there.
It was beautiful. It was by Mount Baker.
Okay.
The area was beautiful. I just couldn't I couldn't accept the culture. I couldn't accept the fact that I was out of the city. This was literally the sticks. This was the mountains, the valley, a whole nother different kind of culture, different kind of kids, people, the whole thing. I just couldn't do it. A year later, we moved back to Chicago.
Wow.
I was out of work for 5 months, 6 months, lived on our savings. And I was super discouraged. I went into depression, thinking I failed God. I messed up. I ran away from a call. I mean, everything. It just got real dark for me. Found a job as a custodian at a church, and then did that for a few months. Didn't do any real ministry. And then I got a call from Youth for Christ, Dick Norton. I got back into youth ministry through Youth for Christ. Did that for a couple of years. Then I went to Grip Outreach for Youth. Did that for a few years, doing coaching. Yeah. I started coaching youth pastors and showing them how to, helping them create youth ministries and that whole aspect. And then one day, man, doing really well, I started a motivational speaking business called Lopez Out Loud. I was really taking off. I started making some money, started writing a book, and not knowing what I'm doing, but I'm just looking for avenues to start making income and still do ministry. And Lopez Out Loud was really starting to take off. I was getting calls, 2-3 calls a week, It was nice. And all of a sudden, Dwayne gives me a call on a Thursday night or something. I was picking up my daughter from work. And he goes, yo, Danny, we reconnected. Oh, Dwayne, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And he says, listen, now, again, it's 9 o'clock at night. And I'm thinking it was an emergency. Yeah, listen, man, we're thinking about launching, doing a church plant in Tri-Taylor. He says, your name popped up a few times. We're wondering maybe you'd be interested in doing a church plant. And I'm thinking, youth pastor? No, never, ever, ever wanted to be a pastor. Never wanted to be a senior pastor. Never. Did I say never?
No, I don't think you did.
No, I didn't want to be. It says, no, not interested. And I looked at my wife and she's like, no, that's not going to fly. So I hung up the phone, let it go. A couple of days later, Dwayne calls me again.
He doesn't let up, man.
No, he doesn't. He said, hey, Danny, how are you? He said, listen, your name popped up again, and we're doing this church plan. I don't know if you're interested. It's like, Dwayne, bro, I love you and everything, but I'm not sure. He says, hey, listen, just drive by the place, think about it, pray about it, and blah, blah, blah. And then that started, I talked to Pastor Mark once, and then I didn't even know, born and raised in Chicago, didn't even know Tri-Taylor even existed. So I found out where it was. Just like you, John, I drove past the area, and I see...
Drive-by. That's the official spiritual term.
An explorational drive.
Yes.
And so I look at the area, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. All right. So then for, I think, 4 months of phone calls through Pastor Mark and Dwayne, because I was just going back and forth, like, man, I don't know if I want to do this. My wife was opposed to it. She's like, no, this isn't going to work. And so the last call was, I remember it was March, and then there was a pastoral retreat. I believe it was up in, I don't know where it was. It was up
probably
a few
Wisconsin
hours.
Or something.
Yeah, it was a few hours away. And my wife was completely opposed. She's like, Danny, I don't think I want to do this. And I said, let's just check it out. Yeah. So we went to the pastor's retreat. And the first person my wife and I met was Kevin Bursema and his wife. And then right when they were unloading their kids, Dudenhoffers pulled up. And then so my wife and I met them, and there was just such a sweet spirit about them. And then for some reason, just both of us just calmed down. By the way, my wife and I, we didn't talk at all, by the way, in the car drive up to the retreat.
Yeah, we need to interview her.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear how
Dude,
the journey,
I'm telling you,
it would be a good interview.
Restart perspective from the pastor's wife.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
Because she was not happy.
I'd like to hear the journey of how she flipped.
The whole drive, it was quiet. We barely spoke. But we got out of the car. She met the wives, and something happened. Right. Something happened inside of her. And then the next 2 days, the meetings, the vision, and just the sense of teamwork and family aspect that was there that we had never experienced. Right. And mind you, I'd worked at 3 mega churches since then.
Wow.
I've been in 3 mega churches.
Wow.
And we did not sense or feel what we experienced there. Wow. And I think what turned around for my wife was when Pastor Mark was talking about ministry and family. Ministry and family was the key. He said family comes first, because we came from a culture where the ministry come first, and it's just driven. You work hard, you work hard, you work hard. It's all about Sunday. We work towards Sunday, and it's just you work yourself to death for the sake of the kingdom. Sacrifice.
And sometimes sacrifice your family.
And that's actually what almost happened with me. Me and my wife. And so when she heard that family came first, and that we should have fun, and the family's priority, and then after that, then it's ministry, because without a healthy family, you can't have a healthy ministry. So she just, at that point, she's like, okay, this is going to work. Then we had communion, and then I had to leave because my wife had to go to work. So the drive back home was totally different. Thank you, Jesus. And at that point, it was a go.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, knowing that I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
All I know is youth ministry. I'm a youth ministry expert. I was considered an expert in the field. Been done it for 27 years. Spoke at conferences. Did all kinds of stuff via youth. I'm thinking I have no idea what to do in regards to church. Being a senior pastor, a lead pastor, it was scary.
Wow.
But what we do is always a risk. It's always an adventure.
That's right.
You trust the Lord, and God. If you're in this, you got to take me. So I remember I had a conversation at the Lakeview campus with Pastor Mark in a car. I think that was the interview.
Yeah, probably.
And I told Pastor Mark, I don't know what I'm doing. I said, but if you help me, I'll do it. If you help me, I'll do it. And he said, okay. And that just pretty much launched. I started in September. I liked how reverse navigation. I like that phrase that you use. That was already in place. So everything was already moving towards this church launch. We were launch number 11 for our...
Which, by the way, is insightful because we said yes to this plant, because this was more like a classic church plant as opposed to a restart, before we had a leader.
Yeah.
So we didn't know who the leader was. And
unconventional.
Unconventional. It's not like we get a leader first. It's what's God saying? What's God doing? Is there God activity? Yes, there seems to be. We're not sure who the leader's going to be quite yet, but let's keep going forward on this thing. That'll eventually come to light.
Yeah,
who's going to lead this
details,
thing? Who's going to be the point man? But we don't really know at this point. But we know one thing: we want it to be God's man.
Yeah.
Right. And you certainly were, Danny.
And I was one of the
firecracker youth pastor.
Yeah. There you go, man.
I was one of the first outsiders to come in.
Yeah.
Because remember, we always grow from within. But Pastor Mark and you guys had already been having meetings on looking at people from outside, but yet have the same love and the same passion and the same vision. And I had experienced the essence of our vision when I came to speak at an Engage conference.
I remember you speaking.
Yeah, and I was one of the first outsiders to come speak.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that's when I saw you guys coming from the side with the smoke, with the SWAT fatigues, and you guys were throwing out grenades. And Pastor Mark preached, started sharing the vision. I thought, I want to be a part of that.
Wow.
I want to be a part of that. And then came the whole phone calls and everything.
Right.
So,
and I remember actually I was leading worship for a restart in the Lincoln Park area, and building up a team from there. Pastor Mark had asked me to go up there, and so I left the Lincoln Park location, and I didn't go back to the Midway location. I went to the Tri-Taylor location because I thought, I was like, you know what? I need a break. My wife was asking like, hey, when's the last time you just sat with me at church, right? Because I never sat with my family. It's kind of that same thing you were talking about. So I said, all right, we'll go to Tri-Taylor. Nobody knows who we are there. And we'll just be able to sit there and do nothing. It'll be great, right? And that lasted, 2 weeks maybe?
Actually, I have a picture with you sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
With your whole family.
And here he is, a musician among musicians.
Yeah.
So you were sniffed out real quick.
Yeah.
Bro.
It was somebody from the location who knew us, and he's like, hey, I told Pastor Danny that you know how to lead worship. I'm like, why would you do that?
Because I was leading worship and preaching.
Yeah, you were. I remember that.
I was. You talk about exhausted.
And I was being completely selfish. I was, burnt out myself. I'm like, I don't want to help him. I just want to sit here with my wife. But that's where I remember when you kind of stepped into pastoring at New Life.
Boom, another unconventional tidbit just came out there. I was leading worship and preaching.
Yeah.
See, another unconventional. All the ducks weren't necessarily in a row. It's not like we had this designated on staff worship leader and a full-time pastor. No, we were just trying to plant a church, and if this is how we do it, this is how we have to do it.
It's the idea of you do whatever it takes,
right?
In order to fulfill the vision. However, if I can just move back a little bit, coming back from the old culture that I was in, which was drive, leadership, go, sacrifice. There was something different about what we were doing here. It felt different. It was different. Where my attitude was, I'm going to sacrifice it all. And we just got to do what's got to be done. So if that means praise and worship, it means praise and worship, raising up a worship team and pastoring and preaching, But there was something different. I believe what was different was I was within a team.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was in a context of a team. I had support. I had leadership that was leading me, motivating me, and at the same time saying, you got to pay the price.
Yeah. You got to do the work.
Right.
Got to do the work.
It's good to take the hit. If I know that I have a team around me that's going to celebrate the win with me.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And
real
I
important.
saw nothing but wins, which is motivating.
Right. Absolutely.
The church was
because the sacrifice is energizing as opposed to draining. So if you're out there all by yourself making the sacrifices, there's nobody around you, right, to celebrate with you, then it's draining. But if there's people around you to celebrate, man, I'll slide into home and maybe bust an ankle, but man, we'll all be celebrating that we scored and we won the World Series.
Yeah.
Whatever the case.
And so for me, that was very motivating, and I loved. Again, I work best in team. I loved the team, and I was just learning who all the guys were. There was there was and is such a great sense of camaraderie, brotherhood, love, respect, which was really important. There was, I felt a strong sense of we're all equals. No one is better than anyone.
Yeah.
I love that. There's no sense of competition because I was looking for it. Because again, the past 3 teams I was a part of, it was unhealthy. This was so healthy. We're all so different. Education is different. I mean, there's smart guys and then guys like me,
Really, really smart guys.
Yeah. But it was beautiful because there was so much support. There was love. There was respect. There was teamwork. And that just motivated me to work hard and to pay the price. So we went ahead and we launched in October, and I was scared. But Pastor Mark represents the team. Pastor Mark was there. He's constantly encouraging, tapping me on the shoulder. Come on, let's do this. Let's try this. He weaned me in. Very smart man. He weaned me in. He just didn't throw me in cold turkey. I preached every other week. So I would preach here for 1 week, and then I'd preach at Tri-Taylor. So it was really interesting how he weaned me into the aspect of take on this location completely. I weaned you, and then we did it for about 6 months, and then all of a sudden he backed away, and then boom, I was in. But then what's strange about that is right after I started taking on Tri-Taylor all on my own, we got Humble Park. And so I'm just fresh in with Tri-Taylor, dust is settled, things are working, and then we have Humble Park. And then Pastor Mark gives me a call. I remember I was working on my bicycle on the porch, and he goes, "Hey, we got an opportunity for this new church in Humble Park. What do you think about pastoring that one too?"
Whenever you hear Pastor Mark say, "Hey, we have an opportunity," it's a defining moment. You remember, I was standing here at this time 20 years ago working on my bike because I got a phone call from Pastor Mark saying, "Hey, we have an opportunity." I don't know.
So we were thinking, we were thinking about da-da-da. And so I told him the same thing. Well, I don't know what I'm doing. I said, but as long as you help me, I'll do it. And then we had Freddie along with us. And that's a whole nother story. But we went ahead and we launched Tri-Taylor in an Italian, that's Little Italy. Because I guess there's 2 of them. There's where you were at with Melrose.
Yeah, Melrose is, we just wouldn't be considered Little Italy, but it was a lot of Italians in it. And it's changed. It's changing.
Yeah. But Tri-Taylor is Little Italy. And right where the church was planted, which was in Hope Academy, that was the center of Little Italy and the medical district.
Yeah.
So we did mailers, we did the whole 9 yards, and the launch was huge. It was, I think, we counted 253 in attendance. It was explosive. It was big. It was fast. It was hard. Man, it was a lot of energy. And then the next few weeks was critical. And we talked a lot about that. And then we begin to see, so there's usually, I think, a 40% drop because you have all the welcomers. So we landed somewhere around 150, 170 people for the next few weeks or the next couple of months. And then we begin to see drop-offs. And here's a few factors that we learned. Number one, our church, the people attending the church did not live in the community. They were all commuters. Everyone came from west of Chicago, north of Chicago, south of Chicago. Everyone drove. And I mean everyone. I don't think we actually had anyone attending Tri-Taylor who actually lived in the community. Maybe one or two students, but they lived on campus and they walked over or drove over. So that was a huge aspect. To begin, we see the attendance begin to drop every month. It just kept on dropping. And that lasted for about 6 years until we went from 153 down. We got all the way down to like 45 in attendance. And that's when we had started our BTC.
Yeah, BTC. What's
breaking
that
through
acronym?
ceiling.
Breaking
through ceilings. So there were three aspects. What's happening in the building physically that's causing us not to grow? What's happening administratively that's not causing us to grow? Or what's happening spiritually that's not causing us to grow?
So I'm sure you felt great about yourself, when you saw the attendance dropping.
Every Sunday, I remember week after week, Sunday morning, when I was seeing people were leaving because they were getting tired of the drive.
I think I left you too, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
I did.
Because you got this opportunity, but that's another story that we don't want to take. I started to feel like I was insignificant. I didn't matter. My talents and abilities weren't enough. And my prayer life, maybe I wasn't praying enough. Maybe I wasn't fasting enough. And everything that you told me to do, all the techniques, everything.
As your coach.
As the coach. I remember I put it into practice. Everything you told me to do. I'm doing this. I'm trying this. I'm trying that. It's not working. We did flyers. We did everything.
So we just said somehow we got to figure out how to get rid of Danny.
Yeah,
That's our style, right? Yeah. This pastor is not.
One Monday afternoon, we had Pastor Mark called me into the principal's office, And then we started looking at the numbers. And I would love to hear that in regards to numbers. We don't focus per se on numbers, but we always say numbers tell stories. So the story that's telling us is something is not working.
Yeah.
And I worked hard with the school. I tried to build relationships with the school, the administrative staff. I got along great with the people in the school. Hope Academy.
It was a cool spot too.
Man, it's a great spot. It has everything that we need. However, there wasn't a good match between who we are as Hispanic, and most of the congregation was Hispanic and African American. It just wasn't working in this neighborhood. And we did everything. We did outdoor services. We did flyers. I tried to meet people from the community, and no one would come. No one would come. No one. For years, no one would come, and I couldn't figure out why. So we prayed a little bit. We had a lot of conversation, and Pastor Mark says, well, what should we do? So he's in our conversation said, well, let's start looking at other areas in the city where I, as the lead pastor, could match, per se, a particular community. So I was looking at going, southwest, going farther west, like around like 25th, North Avenue, where there were more Latinos. And then I was with my elders. We prayed. We met every Friday morning. My two lead elders. We met. We talked. We prayed. We pulled out a map, And then David Ortiz, who's my lead elder, he said, "Danny," he says, "where did you grow up?" And I said, "Well, I grew up in Humboldt Park, but we already launched Humboldt Park West, So I started looking more towards Logan Square and looked at the types of people, the Puerto Ricans and everyone who lived there. And I said, well, let's try that.
Right.
So again, going back to team, Mike Berry, who's the guru of Location Finder.
Bulldog.
Yeah. He had already started looking at different church locations for me. And he found one, Salem, Salem Church in Logan Square. And we had already gone to 2 other locations, and I said, I didn't like this one. So when we got to Salem, it just felt right.
Now, did you catch that this is a value, a New Life value that's not often articulated but important, is that we we never really think in terms of failure.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's just not in our DNA. We don't think like that. And I thank God for that, because what it does is it gives us opportunities to experiment and not feel like I've failed. Now, if you were all by yourself, maybe that would have ended and felt more like a failure. Instead, it was, how can we keep trying, or what can we do differently?
Yeah.
Failure is when you don't try at all, right?
Yeah.
So here we have a very gifted pastor, a very gifted pastoral couple, knows how to pull team together. His preaching's a little bit muscle manus. You know, plus or minus. No, I'm kidding. But here's a very gifted pastor, and we didn't fail in that situation. We just needed to reevaluate it and kind of readjust and move in a different direction.
Yeah.
That's real important. From a coaching standpoint, as you're trying to move a team, as soon as you start thinking in terms of failure, black and white failure, then you're short-circuiting what God can do in a powerful way. It's not really how the Lord works. Sin is failure.
Yeah.
Right. But when you just give up, that's a different issue. So.
Yeah, and I'm thankful that we didn't give up, and it really started from Pastor Mark and your coaching. And John Latore and the other guys who were there. We also, again, team, the importance of team. There was a support, there was encouragement, there was, well, let's try this, let's possibly try that, let's look at this. We just always tried different avenues, because even though there are great books, and I think you were studying at that time. I remember you were saying that you were studying the growth, I forgot the guy's name.
Nelson Sears?
Yeah, the Nelson Sears. You use a lot of his material, and we tried it. For you, it worked in some areas, but in my context, it just wasn't working. And that's where we started asking questions like, why isn't this working? We've started looking at the factor that culturally there wasn't just a healthy match.
Yeah.
In this area.
So you go from being a youth pastor, right, and then you get the call to be a location or senior pastor. You step into that. Really just, willing to follow the Lord into anything, really. God does a change in both your heart and your wife's heart, Serene's. And so you guys step into that, try Taylor, you do that for a little bit, and then, there's another shift, right? But it's still not a restart. This is all before you even get to the restart.
Yeah.
You end up in Humboldt Park, which is closer to, to where you're at right now. Talk us through now, that door is even closing and the restart of New Life East Humboldt Park begins.
Yeah, when we moved into Salem, we saw a beautiful victory. It worked there. It just worked there. The location was right. The mix was right. People from the community were walking to the church. We had a 2-year contract. That contract ended. We didn't want to renew it, so I moved the church again to a church down the street. So we were there. Same thing happened again. It was a wonderful launch. It was a good area. However, Logan Square was gentrifying quickly within 3 years. So according to the stats, over 7,200 Latinos from Humboldt Park and Logan Square moved out. It was just a quick turnover. So I'm beginning to see more yuppies and young couples who are white, and so it was interesting for me to see what this mix was. But the church still worked. Everything was working. We're still ministering to people. And then we had challenges with the building. The building was sold. And that's a long story, but the building was sold and we had to move. So I started looking, where could we move? I knew I wanted to stay in Humboldt Park. It was just an area that I knew was healthy for us. We had to stay in Humboldt Park. So I'm looking at all different locations. By then I learned a lot of things from Mike Berry and of course the team. So I'm looking, praying, prayer walking, and then couldn't find a healthy spot for us to move into until we, through John Latore and his wife, they had mentioned to me about Inner City Impact. And I didn't want to go into a gym, man. I really didn't want a gym because, all the the problems, sound, and there was no parking, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a mess.
Yeah.
But again, going back to team, I got some curtains from Don Kaufman, and we had talked about the aesthetics and how it's going to help with sound, and it was a perfect thing. I bought the curtains. We set it up nicely. It was a right fit for us. We moved the church again. Thank you, Jesus. We didn't lose anyone. By the way, every time you move, you always lose a percentage.
Yeah.
That time we didn't lose anyone. The church was behind it. And again, more people started coming to the church. It was just a beautiful situation. Great partnership with Inner City Impact. We were there for about a year and a half, 2 years. Beautiful. I mean, perfect rent.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were able to save money. We got out of debt. Everything was just right. The church was growing. It was healthy. And then we get the phone call.
Now, before,
The phone call.
The
Hey, I have an opportunity.
Hey.
Exactly right.
So I'm just curious. You have this from the story from Tri-Taylor to Salem, or actually Inner City Impact, right? The Tri-Taylor didn't work there. Probably a socioeconomic kind of issue there that I would think, not so much a church systems issue,
Right.
Because you tried all that. It wasn't the systems issue that was an issue. It was probably the socioeconomic background. But what was God crafting in your heart from Tri-Taylor to Inner City Impact? So before you get into the phone call, I'm curious. I want to hear something vulnerable.
Yeah.
I'm curious what was, I'm not going to ask you how many times you thought about quitting, but I'm just saying, because they're probably innumerable. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
It's like me, innumerable. But no, I'm just curious, what was God crafting you? Because he's bringing you to a place, right? He's got you on this journey. And sometimes we realize it, sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's not real evident, and other times it's like real evident. I'm curious if you were to put it in a couple words.
Man, I have to go back to when I was in Washington. I believe that the Lord called me to Washington. So I sold my house, me and my daughter.
It's all right, man. Urban man put out there with the bears and the pine trees.
Yeah.
That cracks me up.
The day I got to Washington, I'm moving in. We're sitting in the living room, my wife and I. And my wife is ecstatic. She's really happy. Just a beautiful place.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just an hour and a half from Mount Baker. It was opened up our front windows, Mount Baker, the Cascades. I'm sitting down. I pull out a picture and I pull the wrapping from the picture and I see my family. I just broke. I just wept and wept. That was the beginning of 7 months of straight crying, just crying, because I missed home. I missed my kids, and I'm thinking, what did I get into? I thought I made the biggest mistake in my life. Now, God moved in miraculous ways with the work that I was doing there, but I knew I didn't fit.
Right.
So I moved my family back. Now, all that to say that when we moved from Tri-Taylor to Salem, some of those feelings came, but I just knew in this situation, I was in the right place because I was with I had my family. I'm in the concrete jungle. I understand city. However, the city is always evolving, changing, and moving. You can't say this, but it's a weird animal. And I had a strong support from a good team. And so every move I made, what was being crafted in me was take risks, but you're not alone.
Right.
Take risks. We're taking a chance, but look what the Lord has done. See, we have from that time we had 11 or 12 or 13 locations that we see God activity. I love how you always say that. Look for the God activity. I had reference points to look back to. So look what the Lord did. So there was a sense of look what Jesus. Keep on raising up your team. Motivate your team. Stay open.
Yeah.
Constantly talk about what's going on, your fears, and just take a risk. I remember when we were sitting in Salem, we had to rebuild the Salem auditorium. I spent $8,000, man. We had to raise $8,000 in a rented facility. It wasn't ours. In a rented facility, we had to rebuild the men's bathrooms because they were bad. The women's bathrooms, the foyer. for that grand opening, we had to do so much work.
Think about that. You're putting money into a rental home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we never got a thank you. But okay, we don't want to go there.
Right.
Amen. But all of it was because of that first day, and we got pictures of it. Man, when the launch took off, man, it was explosive,
and you see that from the backdrop of that dark time and moment in Seattle.
Yeah.
Right? That season of crying and tears and doubt and just feeling like, what in the world? And now that you're in this place, you're able to kind of see things more clearly now that you're out of Egypt, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you don't forget it. You don't forget what God delivered you from. So even in this moment where you're being crafted in the crucible of shifting and changing, and Tri-Tailored, it didn't really blossom into what you thought it would be. Now you're an inner city impact, and not knowing that God's crafting things as you go along, and moving you towards in His providence, eventually what would be a marvelous restart.
Yeah.
But
And
God using all that to bring clarity.
Yes.
So you're looking through the lens of this dark moment in Seattle and some other uncertainties, but it wasn't as dark because you remember, okay, God took me out of that situation, out of Egypt, so to speak.
Yeah. And we don't have control, John. We don't have control. I remember sitting in the auditorium a week before the launch, and one of my elders was scared because he did a lot of work in the building, and we only had like 40 people in our congregation at the time. And I remember him looking at me and thinking, Pastor Danny, this is not going to work. No one's going to come with us. No one's going to come. And I started believing in him. This is one of my lead elders. And I pushed back. I had to push back. I'm like, you can't tell me that. We just spent $8,000, 2 months of working in this building, and now you're telling me it's not going to work, And I remember we got into a fight, or not a fight, an argument. Yeah, we got into an argument.
You drop kick him?
No, this guy's like 6'2", football.
You could take it.
No, I remember he was scared, and I think what he was telling me was, Pastor Danny, I'm afraid. What do you think? And that was a critical moment for me with my lead elder and my team, that Pastor Danny's crazy. We don't know what he's doing, but he's the lead guy.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, I had to tell him, listen, I had to do this like big motivational speech while at the same time thinking, oh crap, he might be right,
But you know what? I think it's one of those key moments, when you think about moments of change or where God was developing you in that moment to turn to your lead elder and to really speak faith and vision into something that doesn't tell the same story maybe through just the lens of what you see. Like that's a huge thing that you were doing right there. And even if the Lord was using your own mouth to encourage you. Right? Sometimes when you're telling yourself the same thing you're telling somebody else. I think that's huge, because I remember, I've only been on a team for 4 years now as a location pastor, but early on, I remember, and this is probably before Inner City. I can't remember exactly when it was, but maybe in between Salem and that other church, there was another kind of like hard time, man. I remember us praying for you as a team, and just thinking about all those things that God was using in your life to get you to the place right now, which is not a piece of cake, and I want to get into that, because I think part of what we're talking about restarts, but I think it's important to kind of get a backdrop.
Yeah. What was happening there, we had moved now from Salem to Humboldt, and things started falling apart at Humboldt. People were leaving. I don't know what was happening. I mean, I at that time, our NGLs, I had 6 guys in my NGLs.
What's an NGL?
Next generation leaders. So I was mentoring.
So like Timothy's.
Yeah, a bunch of Timothy's, and for some crazy everything happened within a span of about a year and a half. People just started leaving, and I couldn't understand why, and it started affecting me. And I think what I was doing was I started working way too hard in trying to keep people. So I was mentoring 6 guys, taking care of the location, asking questions as to why are we losing money, and then the building's being sold. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And then at that time, I was I was ashamed. There was a sense of shame because I didn't really tell anybody and the team. That was a big mistake. I didn't really tell anyone in the team what was happening inside of me and my fears and my sense of failure, because people were just leaving. And I don't know. And I was like, why are people leaving? Critical leaders, NGLs were leaving.
Yeah.
And then at that time, we were working on doing a launch with one of my NGLs, my main guy, whom I married, and walked through him. And then, man, we had all these plans where we're going to launch in Hermosa. And I'm thinking, yeah, at least I'm going to have one big win.
Yeah.
We were months away from the launch. And then this guy, just out of the blue, tells me, my wife and I decided on leaving, and we're leaving next week. And
boom.
Yeah, it was like getting hit.
I remember
with
that.
the baseball bat. So, but everything was just everything was just working up to that one moment, and I just completely broke. It's like, enough is enough. I'm done. I remember he looked at me, and I hate these words. Pastor, we love you, but. And I always told him, because for last year I kept on getting people, Pastor, we love you, but. And I remember telling him, I hate those words. And he went ahead and he used those words on me. And I looked at him, I gave him a nasty look and said, you know what? Shut up. Just shut up. Because I was so angry. And he was
that on
sorry.
Video?
And he up and walked, and I just cried by myself. And I made a phone call, my lead elder, and just crying. And I told him I quit out loud. I just kept on saying it over and over. I quit. I'm done. I'm spent. It's over. And he, at that moment, he didn't say anything. He just started praying. He started praying. And for about 10 minutes, all he did, I'm saying, I quit. I'm done. I'm finished. This is too much. I can't. Hallelujah. Oh, God. And he's just praying and praying.
Wow.
And I said, you know what, man? I'll talk to you later. Boom, I hung up.
Thank God you have an elder like that.
Yeah.
Amen.
Just tell him you quit, man.
And then I went home. I shut everything. I just closed. I went home. This was on a Monday.
Got in a fetal position.
I sat on the couch.
blankie.
I sat on the couch, and then I called my other elder, Dwight, and I did the same thing. He picked up the phone, and it was a soft conversation. He says, "What's wrong, Weston?" Well, you know what? I'm just struggling. And he goes, and then he started kind of giving me some kind of a motivational speech, and I said, "You know what? I'm done. I quit." And I told him the story, and he goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You know, I'm done. I'm crying. I'm finished. I'm done. I'm tired of all this. People are leaving." And then he started kicking into this. He just started preaching to me, man. He starts dropping the word, and then he said, he reminded me of a message that I preached a few months.
Oh man, that's good.
And I said, "Okay, Dwight," and it's almost like he talked me off the ledge. The Lord spoke through him.
Praise God
And
for elders.
amen. Praise the Lord for elders. And then he prayed real quick for me, and then I called my wife. And then my wife, when I told her, you know what, I'm thinking about quitting. Now I changed the verbiage. Except for I'm thinking about quitting. I'm tired. And they told her the story. And then she looked at me. She on the phone. She says, "Well, Danny," she says, "What's your option, or what's your
Plan.
What's your plan?" I said, "What's your plan?" I said, "Well, I don't have a plan." And she goes, "Well, then we can't quit." I said, "But I want to quit." She says, "But you don't have no plan. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do?" And I was like, "Man, I don't know."
That's why I want to quit.
But a half an hour later, she came home, and I was again having a pity party and beating myself up. And she sat right next to me, and she had 2 sheets of paper, and they were all full of scriptures. And all she did was just read the word.
Praise God.
She just read scripture after scripture pertaining to failure, loss, all that. She just read the scriptures to me, man. And then we just held hand and prayed. And I said, "Okay, fine. I'm not going to quit. Let's just keep on going, and then
It's great.
we'll see what happens." So,
And here you are today on a
Yeah.
podcast, telling the audience.
yeah, because I was serious. I
Yeah.
mean, this stuff.
Well, I think we grossly underestimate just how many people, pastors, especially in this last year, 19 months, who have repeatedly thought about quitting.
Mm-hmm.
Some have, you know, and I really do believe, you know, this is kind of a faith belief right now that like there's somebody who's going to be watching this right now, Danny, hearing this story, and this is going to be the shot in the arm to just remind them that it's God who's faithful.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
It's God who's perfect. It's God who's sovereign. And we just need to continue to have that mindset of, okay, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't leave me, if you help me, I'll go.
Yeah.
Right. And that really is, you know, kind of the base for how you came into this restart, you know, which I kind of want to enter into now. You know, we got all this backstory, and it's one of great successes and really hard challenges, both, you know, ministry wise, but also emotionally wise.
Yeah.
Right. And then, and what happened? How did you get the call for this restart at East Humboldt Park?
Well, we were at Inner City Impact, and everything was, God just literally turned everything around. I created a prayer list, and I still have it. It's in my little prayer book that I formed from that whole incident. In a sense, I like rebuilt myself. I just decided I'm going to do this differently. I pulled back from the amount of work I was doing, from the amount of mentoring that I was doing. I pulled back and I created a Sabbath day. Tuesdays became my fasting and prayer Sabbath day. I just sought the Lord. We launched Inner City Impact, and God answered every prayer. I mean, we were like $40,000 in debt. I mean, nothing was working, and just God turned it all around when we moved to ICI, and it was just beautiful. Everything was just beautiful. I was happy. Everyone was happy. Everything turned around, and all of a sudden, I get the call from Pastor Mark. And or was it you? I can't remember. It was you or Pastor Mark. One of you guys called me
Probably
and said, "Oh, it was you. It was you because you said, you know what, Danny? And nothing was for sure yet. It says, I want to bring you in
Right.
on a restart situation, and I want you to just kind of observe and just learn."
Yeah, that was the first phone call. It was a Zoom call.
Yeah.
Right.
No. It was a location. We went to go look at the building.
Okay.
That's when I came
okay.
in. By then, you had already been talking.
I had been talking with them for 6 months.
Yeah.
Kind of quietly, didn't make a big deal about it.
Mm-hmm.
Only a few people knew.
So we went in, and I'd known about this building, and I'd known about the church. And it's like, I don't know, an eighth of a mile away from where we're at, very short distance. So I went and just literally just to come alongside of you and watch you and Pastor Mark talk to their elder board and everything. And then I think we did that twice. The second time we went was, I think, the full elder board. And then that's when my name was dropped for the possible lead pastor for this building. Now I'm sitting there looking at all these Latinos knowing about the church and their culture. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, no. I don't want to get into this because I know everything behind
the expectations that come along
yes.
with.
Yeah, and their cultural differences, the church style.
And you don't speak Spanish.
And I speak
But you're Puerto
Spanglish.
Rican.
Yeah. Spanglish.
Which is weird expectations there.
Yeah. And all these people are looking at me and observing me and saying, well, can you do this? And can you do that? And I was like, oh, Lord. And I'm looking at you and Pastor Mark and thinking, Jesus. And I'm looking at the building, excited about the building. But like, I like ICI. Everything's nice at ICI, man. We're good at ICI. We're growing. Everything's nice.
And here, you know, what I'm observing is the tension, the difference in tension between a Tri-Taylor, which is like a classic church plant, and the expectations and tensions that comes with that, versus a restart.
Yeah.
Restarts are very unique. They have a lot of relational tension potentially, and just a lot of expectations that need clarification, and kind of manage those expectations as you go along.
Because sometimes you step on a landmine, but you didn't know that you stepped on a landmine.
Right.
You don't know you stepped on it until you step on it, right?
Right.
But I knew that there were landmines there.
Oh, yeah.
I knew that there were. I just don't know
Landmines,
where they
sacred
were.
cows.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
So you get the call, you get invited into the conversations, you know, and then things progress, and there's some green lights. We're feeling on a New Life side, we feel like, yes, this is something we should do. You are now appointed to be the lead pastor here for this location, right? And thus begins the process of bringing this marriage together, right? Where the congregation that is existing and the congregation that you're bringing, right, is coming together. Talk to us about, from your perspective as the location pastor, man, what was that like?
Well, when we decided that this was a green light, Pastor John kept on reminding me, Danny, you got to make sure that you build these relationships. Focus on your. He said, in other words, he was telling me, just work your gifts. My gift is shepherding. My gift is networking. My gift is people. I do well with people. He says, and we'll take care of the rest. You know. However, he was making sure that I was still making decisions along with things that were being done. In other words, I love the way John was able to keep me in the loop strongly while giving me the permission to keep on doing what I do best. So I started. Now, mind you, the pandemic. We're in the middle of a pandemic. So this is now where people are wearing masks and the social distancing and everything. And then I talked to my leadership team and brought them into what was happening and told them that I was going to be missing every other week. So I started preaching at the new location so that I could introduce myself and introduce my preaching style and introduce New Life to the people who were there. And there were probably about 50 to 60 people who were in this congregation. And so I just was being me. And then I'm preaching through an interpreter, knowing that 90% of the people in this congregation all speak fluent English, but they wanted to keep Spanish, you know?
It's a sacred cow.
Oh, it's a sacred cow. And the building was a sacred cow, but the culture was the cow. I mean, that we can't lose this. And I started seeing that and feeling that, and I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know what to do with that. And so I just kept on praying and kept on preaching and meeting people and navigating this very important relationship with the two intern pastors who were very interesting people. They're powerful people. And I had to learn how to, and this was so hard, learning how to massage this relationship so that we can keep going forward, but yet not stepped on. But
well, yeah, here's the thing, when you inherit a culture like that, and there's some really strong, very faithful leaders that kept the church kept it alive.
Yeah, there's a legacy there.
Provided leadership there for years, kept the place a ministry center. Super faithful people. Love those folks. And but with that sometimes comes, it's hard to release. It's hard to release because our identities are wrapped up into things, and just the sense of wanting to make sure that the people that you're leaving are going to be okay, healthy, and those are admirable things. But there does come a point where you have to release it, and that's hard for the pastor who's highly relational, trying to navigate that world. So you're recognizing, on one hand, great, faithful, strong leaders. God wants to move this thing to a different level. And you're trying to be the change agent there, and that tension point can be difficult at times. Yeah. But praise God, His faithfulness comes through, right?
It did.
Did you feel any kind of a sense of empowerment, supernatural empowerment from God as you were navigating those relationships, like wisdom, or at least getting on your knees to?
There were two situations where because my wife was heavily involved in this. So she and I, on two occasions, experienced the presence of the Lord in a strange way. I can't say we felt His Spirit, it's the peace and the angels singing. It wasn't like that.
It was an equipping probably.
It was an equipping, and it was a dark time because she and I were so angry because of these meetings that we came out of, and we didn't know what to do. And we knew that there were some wrong feelings, thoughts that were in our hearts that were coming. So in the car,
Is that when you went for a triple cheeseburger?
Yes,
down the road?
yes, yes. It was about 10:30
Comfort
at night. I'm an emotional eater.
Hey,
I remember that.
There was a
confession.
burger. There was a Burger
I can relate
King.
to that.
from
I don't
my
know
house.
I don't know anything about that type of stuff at all.
And so we just would be in the car and we just started praying, and we would to both of us, we were saying, okay, I'm feeling this, and we know it's not healthy, so let's pray. Let's pray.
Yeah.
And we would deal with it. I wish I can say God took it away, but what the Lord did, He's walked through this valley of the shadow of death. He walked through, and He helped me constantly remember this is just a season, you know.
Yeah.
But we're learning. But we're always looking at what's the end game, what's the possibilities that can happen.
Yeah. So in a restart situation, right, there's going to be, you're the agent of change, right? As a location pastor, this is your perspective. You have a team that's coaching you, and you got, you got a team of pastors, essential services that is helping you through all of these different aspects of being ready. But there's an emotional, spiritual responsibility that you have to be that agent of change. No one can do that for you, right? You're the guy leading the charge. And so how did you deal, and I realize this is all still current, right? And you had to face these things early on, but how did you deal with conflicting tastes and maybe values, like things like worship? John, you talked about changing worship and how that went. There was a whole group of people that met for you, or youth ministry or other programs that were pre-existing where there was going to be a shift, and how did you do that?
It had to be, in this situation, we had to do it very softly, carefully. Gabriel, my son, who's the worship leader, he would come with me when I would speak at this new location. And so we were slowly introducing the way we worship at New Life. A lot of worship, not that they didn't, but the style of worship and the style of music was different. It was predominantly English. And so we were softly doing that. And then his wife can sing in Spanish, so she came a couple of times. So therefore we were able to sing in English and sing in Spanish and worship in a manner where we included them in with the way that we worship at New Life, at our location. And so therefore the people were like, okay, I like this. So it was very slow and very, we did it as carefully as we could. However, we knew that it was different.
Yeah.
And they knew it was different.
So you kind of knew. We use this term, and I would like to define it a little bit, like sacred cows. Talk to me about, what does that mean? Someone listening.
Sacred cows, and there are different types. For them, it was their culture, because the sacred cow is a source of comfort, familiarity. This is the way we do things. This is our thing. This is our identity. And here you're coming in, and you can take this away. And if you take it away, you're taking away our identity, or the way we do things. And so there was a lot of pushback even from the congregation, from a number of the congregants who were coming in.
I think the biggest thing, or maybe one of the biggest things, is I just think about it. Every restart is gonna face, or even church, restart is gonna face these sacred cows. And I think the problem, or the challenge for the pastor going in is the mission is to make disciples, right? And you mentioned this earlier. It was the methodology was what was loose, right? The mission was solid. And so sometimes when we think, if we're fixated on identity rather than the mission of the church, we can get lost in these things that really aren't as important as the mission of the gospel of Jesus Christ in that community, right? But community, gospel work, evangelism, making disciples, these are really important things. How did you navigate, shepherding and teaching this congregation to hold in higher value what really is important?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I had done, once we obtained the location, or just before we fully got the location, I had 3 meetings with the leadership team of the church, and then our leadership team. And so, my first meeting was just with their leadership team, all the leaders, the ministry leaders that they had left. So I was able to sell them, or at least share my heart with them, and what I believe to be true, and I wasn't changing anything, but I was just coming along and saying, this is a win, this is a win, this is a win. You know, that we agree on all these things: ministry, worship, children's, blah blah blah. You know, and we have resources that can help fine tune or sharpen what we're already doing. Again, we want to honor what they've been doing. I'm not taking anything away.
Yeah.
We're just bringing more resources that they didn't have.
Yeah.
And they were welcoming all the resources that we were bringing. So that was a win. My next two meetings were with both teams combined. And then again, we shared vision, gave them, let them know, man, we're heading this direction. Man, look at what we have. I think there were, 40, 50 people who are all leaders. I'm thinking, look at all this potential. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Praise God. And everyone got excited. We did a survey. Everything was positive, and we were excited. Both teams were excited. And by the third meeting, I kept on using the word family. Mm-hmm. Family. We're a family, because that's part of our mission. We're a family of love, and this is what we practice. So everyone was in. Everyone was bought in. And then finally, we got the location. We had a big Sunday where they signed the papers. They gave me the keys. It was cute because they gave me a domino set. Never forget. Let's keep on playing.
Oh yes,
I love it. That was really cool.
That's huge too, especially in like Hispanic culture, Puerto Rican.
Dominoes,
man. Yeah.
So that it was huge.
Yeah. Did you catch the leadership principle there? Big one. It's what John Maxwell calls momentum, or Big Mo. When Big Mo, momentum, is in the house, you can institute changes a lot easier. You can slay the sacred cows a lot easier when you have momentum, when there's positive movement and energy.
Yeah.
It's like people are saying, okay, well, it doesn't really matter what color the carpet is, because we have people to win to Christ.
Right.
It doesn't really matter if we have a portable baptistry and there's water splashing around and we're making messes. That's good. So that's the key leadership principle that I'm hearing from you on that.
Yeah. And these were the changes that I did make were aesthetic in the sanctuary, which everyone in the sanctuary welcomed, because everyone did not like the changes that were made. I think 5 or 6 or 7 years prior, everything was dark. It was more theatric. It was just the colors were. They were not happy with what was there. So we came in.
I saw the before pictures, and I saw when you guys were kind of going through the whole construction, and
so
tremendous
they were
amount
really
of work,
excited about the changes. There were positive changes, and everything looked brighter, and so they welcomed that. But again, we have to go back to that sacred cow.
Yeah,
there were still a large portion of the people who remained who still didn't want to let go of that cultural safety net that I worked with. We still kept, we did a bilingual service for them. I went in and I fulfilled all of my promises to the lead pastors who were leaving and to the leadership. To the T, I fulfilled all of them. But when we launched the second service, which was bilingual, little by little, they stopped coming. And I learned that what they wanted, what was always there, even if it was unhealthy. Even if it was unhealthy. When I learned that, I was amazed. But we were already in, and we were moving forward. Yeah. And I fulfilled all of the promises. I encouraged. I did everything I could to meet with these people, to love them.
And the good news, and through that, there's a lighthouse that continues on. That's a space that could have very, very well become condominiums.
Yes.
Gentrified community.
Yeah, like continuing the legacy. I think about the location that I'm at right now, and New Life Homer Glen is really, it's 188 years old.
It's beautiful.
Wow.
This church started in 1833. There's a capstone in the building that says 1833 to 1952. That's when the building had burned down and they rebuilt it. And it's gone through a couple different names. But now it's New Life Community Church. But it's built upon the legacy of those that were faithful. Yeah. And I'm sure there were tons of things that other pastors before me had to deal with, sacred cows of that nature. But that's when you're doing a restart, that's so fresh. it's not something that we should say, oh, it might happen. It will happen, right? You're doing a restart. You're going to face the challenges of sacred cows and being an agent of change, right, for the good of the gospel in that community.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to have to make hard decisions. You know, yeah. You love the people, right? You shepherd the people. You honor the legacy, but you still might, in the end, have to make a decision to be an agent of change, to lead that congregation to what we'll say health for the community, you know, to be that lighthouse that shines bright in a dark community, maybe.
Yeah, being an agent of change means, for me as a location pastor in this specific location, in this community, is we're watchmen. We can see what others cannot see. That's our job, is to stay close to God, stay close to what's happening in culture and what's happening this community is clearly gentrifying. And I had to try to help these people understand, listen, everything's changing, but the gospel will always remain the same. Right. We're going to reach these people, but it's a different season now. But there was a group of people who refused to see what's changing because they didn't want to lose what was safe for them, you know. But I had to kind of constantly talk about it and let them know, listen, you're part of this story. You're part of this movement. You're part of a family. You're part of this change that's happening in the community. Be a part of. Join us. God is moving. Let's move with God.
Yeah.
You know. So many of them have left, and we have a remnant of about 20 who've stayed and who are loving what they're seeing. I mean, the location is growing beautifully.
Yeah.
It's healthy. It's strong. It's moving in the pandemic. That's what's blowing my mind.
And one of the things that you know, as a location pastor, you probably know this, but there's several sacred cows that are slain before you even enter the scene as a lead launch pastor. For example, the name.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, it's a non-negotiable when we're navigating through the idea of merging together and doing a restart. We address the name. So if it's First Baptist of Melrose Park, it's going to be now New Life Community Church, or affectionately known as New Life Elgin or New Life Homer, or whatever. Yeah. And then also, you know, the way that we provide leadership in the church, it's going to be every one of our locations has a lead pastor, but also has an elder team, which you've referenced very helpfully several times in this conversation, has an elder team, and it's led by the pastor and the elders. There isn't a congregational vote. There isn't anything like that. It's it's basically a biblical approach to church leadership and governance. That's a non-negotiable, something that you don't have to fight that battle. It's something that we clarify as we go through the process. So there's a lot of different types of sacred cows that we address on the front end that are just non-negotiables. These are deal breakers if we're not gonna, if we're gonna go or not gonna go. So
yeah,
that's good to know.
Traditions and practices, tend to be those sacred cows, whether it's the traditional type of music that we used to worship with, and then you go into a contemporary, or the language or the stylistic things, or sometimes it is the plaque on the wall, that you can't touch because of what it represents. Yeah. And those types of sacred cows. And, some need to be, I would say, led to pasture quickly, and then others you do them over time. Like you didn't remove that plaque, in that hallway, that picture until years later, right? Right. Why? Because it really didn't affect what you were there to do for the work of the gospel, and you were able to build around that before you were to build the momentum, so to speak, right?
And I recognize, there was things that were kind of telltales. Nobody ever told me to not take that down. Right. But I knew to take it down was a message. So I kept it up for like 7 years or whatever the number was. I don't remember. But I do know that when that pastor passed, he was the pastor there for 40 years in Melrose Park. I do know that when he did pass, his wife used the insurance money to buy a steeple to put on. So if you go by New Life Melrose, there's a big, beautiful steeple. I think it's like amazes me. It's been through so many windstorms and lightning strikes, and it's still there. But it was the insurance money of the pastor
Wow.
who pastored there
That's
for 40 years.
beautiful.
Now, I'm not going to take his picture down. I don't care. It's just
Yeah.
going to stay up there for as long as we need to. And there's a beautiful, wonderful story and history behind that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and we honor the stories. We
Yeah.
thank God for the stories.
amen, brother.
You know, here's an inevitable thing as well. You know, you've mentioned that there's no restart. There's not a cookie cutter method to restart. Every one of them is different
Right.
and unique, right? And we have to massage through different things. And sometimes that means walking away from a situation.
Right.
But sometimes you get into a situation. We accept the responsibility of doing a restart, right? And we're responsible for God, before God's people, to love them and care for them. Maybe we would have done things differently, right? Or we walk into a situation like, I didn't really handle that well. Mistake, right, was made, or you know, I remember, this is not about a restart, but I remember one time I was leading worship for a team, one of our locations, and I was just, you know, I'm a kid from the South Side going to a North Side location, right? I know some of the people on the team, but I don't know everybody. And someone put into the bulletin, special guest worship leader Eric Marquez and his band, right? And one of the worship leaders who was serving with me saw it and was like, "Oh, so we're your band, huh?" And I was like, "Oh," I was like, I have no clue who said that. I did not tell them to put that there. Like, that has nothing to do with me, right? And they're kind of like these missteps that, you know, were they meant well,
Yeah.
right? They really messed me up, man. Like, you know, and
had nothing to do with
if I could go back, I would not put that in the bulletin, right?
Yeah.
And what are those moments when it comes to restarts? You're like, man, you know what? I would have handled that differently if I could get that back. You know, maybe John, you can speak to that too, where it's like, it wasn't that it ended bad. Obviously, the restart still happened, but man, I think I learned this valuable lesson through this situation. I think someone would really benefit from not just our wins, but maybe from our stumbling through things.
Yeah. For me, I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned out of this is my own personal biases that I had even towards my own culture. That was a big lesson for me. And thank God for school. I'm learning so much. I'm in school at Baki right now. One of the books from my last semester that I read had to deal with my own selfish biases, because I felt safe in who I am and in my identity. And now I'm in I'm just surrounded around Puerto Ricans and Mexicans, and all they do is speak Spanish. And I feel like an outsider, yet I'm supposed to be an insider culturally. I'm supposed to know Spanish. I'm supposed to, you know, and they're all looking at me thinking, you're supposed to, you know, why aren't you speaking Spanish? So what I would do is I would start speaking Spanish, trying to fit in. And then I have a mental roadblock because I can't remember that word. And then I get angry, then I get embarrassed. And then I feel small. I mean, this happened over and over and over again. And so now I'm getting mad at these people because I feel like I'm supposed to be like that because I'm Puerto Rican. I mean, this just happened every single week until finally, in the midst of this class, I saw it in me, and I was almost racist towards Latinos, and I'm Latino.
Yeah.
And I had to come to the Lord with that and ask him to forgive me, because I'm getting angry at these people, which means now I'm going to pull back, and I don't feel like shepherding you because you're making me feel like this. You're making me feel bad. You're making me feel small, and you don't even know it. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
You know. So I downloaded Duolingo.
There you go.
And I got how many days? Like 60 days. I'm just every day I'm practicing, and I'm speaking more. Now even while I'm preaching, I've remembered so many words. I'll throw one or two sentences out in Spanish, and it's cool because all the Latinos now are looking at me like, vaya, Pastor Danny, vaya. It's like he's doing it, and so I was able to build a bridge.
Cool, yeah.
And they know that I'm trying, and they know that I want to learn. They know that I'm dealing with this, my own issue, and not because I want to be better. What I want is I want to build a bridge so that we can be one, we can be a family. Yeah. And if this is what it takes, I'm willing to do it. You know,
Yeah.
and so that has been able to bring the people from this new location closer. Those who stayed, they're now closer. And one lady walked up to me about a month ago, and she stood far from me for a while. One day she came up to me after service, and she said, first of all, she says, "Pastor Danny, you are my pastor." That was huge.
Yeah.
Huge. She says, "You are my pastor." She says, "And I'm so proud of you that you're trying." I almost started crying, thinking, wow, that was a big win.
Yeah.
Big win for a bias that I had to deal with on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. John, what about you, man? Something that I know you've done everything perfect over the years, so it's going to be really hard to find something.
Yes, I think, a lot of it, you could point to one or two different circumstances. I'll share one circumstance, but I think ultimately, frankly speaking, and this is not just in the area of restarts, but just generally speaking as a pastor and a leader, it's just my own insecurities. I'm my own worst enemy. And when you are in a leadership crucible, especially in the context of a change agent, and it's easy to just allow your insecurities to blind you or create a false narrative that's really just not true. And if you can't get that remedied, you're going to run into troubles. I think that insecurities, unchecked, a mind that's not transformed or renewed, a life that's not transformed because there's no mind renewal, will eventually trip a pastor up in a very serious way. So I think just more, I would approach it more, just less, taking myself a little less seriously, being all about mind renewal, more so entering into relational situations, like I'm inheriting elder teams too. There, sometimes in a restart you'll inherit an elder team. Functionally, they may not be defined as an elder team that you've actually picked at that time, but functionally you still need a team to help you lead the church even through the transition. But with that comes different expectations and a lot of transition. So you can come out of the end of that, man. If you're not right, you can come out of the end of that a little bit jaded.
Yeah. And
so you got to, I think, just that tightness with the Lord and kind of going into it with just a more of a mature mindset. I kind of know what I'm getting into now. And so when I talk to other pastors, I'd really try to tell them. I was talking to a pastor the other day about restarts, and I said, just know what you're getting into. And here's what you're getting into, man. And I just painted the picture so that he'd see it clearly. You're getting under the engine here. You're getting underneath the car machine, all the crud and the dirt, and some of it's going to flick into your eye, some of it's going to hurt. But you've got to learn to just kind of sometimes you got to learn to be able to navigate that, and that's a hard one. Just generally speaking, as a leader, but more particularly in restarts because everything's magnified. Yeah. One thing that I did that's kind of funny story. I had some interns at one point at New Life Melrose, and it was Easter, and we were gearing up for Easter. It's the big, it's like the big deal. Yeah. It's the Super Bowl for pastors, right? And I got interns. I actually got bodies to help me, which is whole nother subject. And so one of them came up to me and said, "Hey, Pastor, we want to put a sign out on the, we had one of those kiosks out there, and they wanted to put a sign out there." Get off your keister and join us for Easter. So in a weak moment, they're hitting me, and I'm happy because I got interns. And I said, "Yeah, go ahead, put it up there." so right on the main street in Melrose, we got on our kiosk, we have this sign that says, "Get off your keister and join us for Easter."
Oh my goodness!
I'm just glad they didn't say, "Get off and join us for Mass."
Yeah.
So, but anyways. So I go to church, I come into church the next Sunday, man, and I'm just, I came in and I have all these folks circle me, some of the older people. Pastor, do you know what keister means? Do you know what keister means? So I said, yeah, okay. So we ended up getting it off. We took it off that Sunday. But get off your keister and join us for Easter.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's just, there's all kinds of different stuff. But I think the big one, when I look over, if I do a broad stroke, would be just making sure that you're tight, tight in your relationship and communion and rhythms with the Lord. Make prayer a huge priority. Prayer, the Word, that's got to be something that's just filling your tank on a regular basis. It has to be priority, where even some things may fall apart. If you can be real busy on a lot of important things. There's a lot of great excuses to be busy, but you can't let those. It's better to have those things fail or become weak, as opposed to neglecting your own personal, health, spiritual health, before the Lord. And you need to hear the voice of God when you're in a change agent kind of situation. You're making rapid decisions that are very, very consequential. You have to do that from a place of hearing the voice of God, of taking those rhythms.
And they have a domino effect that you need to be prepared for, you know. And that type of that stamina doesn't come from like binge watching Hulu, right? That's not going to fill you and give you what you need. You do need to be very close to the Lord, because you are making changes that affect godly people's lives who have been in a certain way for years, maybe, you know, and your job is not to just disrupt them or to make them angry. It's to shepherd them, and it's to make that location, that local church, effective at making disciples for the kingdom of Jesus.
And I'd like to say one other thing too. Just, you know, we talk about team here, and that's a beautiful thing. It's great to bank on other pastors, but ultimately, you're the one that's responsible.
Yeah.
So the work of the restart and all the relational stuff and all the transitions and figuring it out is squarely on your shoulders. And you will feel alone. So don't blame the team.
Right.
Don't go picking on everybody else and making it there. It's you ultimately are the one that's responsible to make this church either go forward or not. It's in God's hands, yes, but the team can do so much, but ultimately you're going to have to lead it. So it's a healthy kind of weight that every pastor should feel. I don't care how new you are, how old you are as a pastor, you need to squarely feel the pressure.
Yeah, there's a reverence for that responsibility.
The team's not always going to come in there to rescue you. If you're in a financial situation, you're going to have to raise the funds.
Yeah.
You know, each location has its own autonomy when it comes to financial. You have your own budget, and we can talk about some of the mechanics of that, but you ultimately have to feel the pressure. Otherwise, if you go into it with your eyes not open in that regard, what happens is when things begin to go south or you begin to experience some real difficulty, you're going to blame everybody else because your expectations on the front end going in were wrong. Yeah. So we need to make sure we clarify that with pastors. That
I remember Pastor Mark telling me squarely, sitting down for the location, and this is before I knew what location it was, and we were just it was Pastor Josh Hollick actually who reached out to me and said, "Hey man, what would you even consider this?" And my wife had a similar conversation. She was like, she just kind of gave me like, "Nah, we're not talking about that. You know, let's just." I had Josh and his family over for breakfast, and so, but. When meeting with Pastor Mark, I remember him saying, "Eric, I just want to let you know, like, giving me the very blunt force truth, honest, you know, what's happening here at this location. And Eric, there's no money, Eric, there's no, we cannot give you a salary, right? You're going to have to raise support, Eric. Do you understand what we're saying? You're going to leave this over here to come and do this." And I'm like, I know. Like, yeah, like I know, like me and my wife, this is what we feel like the Lord's telling us. So I understand what you're saying. I understand this is not going to be easy. I understand this is in some ways going to be uphill, but I believe, you know, that the Lord has called us here. And I think some other things that I just want to highlight that you said, you know, both of you guys have kind of mentioned this, you know, your personal walk with the Lord is important. Someone once told me, a man I respect very, very dearly, Scott Nichols, and he told me, "Eric, the most important thing you can do in ministry is walk with the Lord." You know, the most important thing you can do is walk with the Lord, and that's been so true. He also told me that when you get kicked in the teeth and when things are really, really hard, one of the things that's going to keep you grounded is the calling that God has on your life.
Yep.
You know, and so that filters into your marriage, into your relationship with your kids, your family. And I've heard it said too, that, you know, if it's not good at home, don't export it, you know? And so making sure that it's good at home and making sure that you're right with the Lord is really one of the fundamentals, key things, to not just restarts, but ministry in general, I would say. But specifically restarts, you know, it's definitely imperative that you don't look like you're walking with the Lord, but you're walking with the Lord.
Amen.
You have that relationship, that you're being fed. You know, yeah, you got a team, but ultimately you're responsible, right? We have great resources, and we do that intentionally because we know the weight of the work, right? That is needed. But that will never, and is never meant to replace or to substitute your walk with the Lord,
Right.
and the leadership of yourself, your family, and the work you do on the ground there.
Yeah.
So restarts are hard, man, you know. And
Yeah.
Danny, I want to thank you, bro, because I know you were very honest and transparent
Yeah.
with your story. But I think it's great to kind of hear the perspective of the location pastor, man, the fears, the inadequacies, the challenges, the personalities that you face, right? The sacred cows that you have to work through, the legacy that you have to honor, and how do you do that? And for anybody looking in, they get to see through the lens of a location pastor stepping into that role and what that looks like. And I think it's super helpful for those listening. So thank you, man. Appreciate that.
It's a privilege working alongside with such a great team, men of God.
Yeah.
So.
Any closing thoughts?
Well, I just think, you know, maybe a future discussion, maybe a little bit about, you touched on it here, you know, here's a building, here's a congregation, no money. You know, I think a lot of times the paradigm is that you have to have all these ducks in a row. You have to have the money, you have to have the leader, you have to have the building, sometimes they come out of order.
Yeah.
But because the methodology, right, changes, not the message, right? So we have bivocational pastors now. A lot of times we'll bring in a guy who's working. He's working at Chicago public school system, but he's also able to be a pastor. And we're seeing that trend a lot more, and we're able to leverage more leaders and to do it more affordably is that bivocational piece. Yeah. So that's part of it. Or having a building and moving in that direction, but not necessarily having a pastor or all our ducks in a row, where a pastor's going to have to raise the money. You're going to go here and raise the money. So in other words, sometimes we keep ourselves from moving forward for kingdom advancement because we put these different roadblocks in front of us that aren't really roadblocks. It just depends on how you look at it. Yeah. You know, the way that you approach it. And so I think that's another important piece. It would be fun to talk a little bit about leadership development and how we do it, leadership placement, how we do it, context of church, context of restarts. Yeah, I think that'd be great. I think that would be great. Yep. Hey, well, thanks for listening today. We do hope that this content was very helpful for you as we get to hear a real life restart story from the pastor's perspective. If you know somebody that would benefit from this content, we would love that you would share this podcast with them. And let them know that we're here. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast so that you can stay up to date with our next episodes. And we'll see you soon.